Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. In case you hadn't noticed, it's tax season, and your tax returns are due a week from Tuesday, April 19th. We get the Monday grace period because of the Patriots' Day holiday. So let's talk taxes, about how our tax dollars are being used on Beacon Hill and what the prospects are for our economy and for tax revenues. With our guest today, the president of the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, Eileen McAnneny. Eileen, welcome.
John, thanks. Great to be here.
Good to have you back. In your most recent budget review over at MTF, you wrote, quote, sluggish growth in tax revenues continues to complicate the revenue picture. What's the problem? Why is growth so sluggish, and what are the implications?
Well, so I think this economic recovery that we're in has been different than other economic recoveries, and a principal difference is that tax revenues have grown at a slower rate than they have in previous recoveries. And the other thing is, this economic recovery is of longer duration. So we're now in year 9 of the economic recovery, and typically you see a downturn in and around year 7. And so what we're experiencing is year-over-year revenue growth, which is a good thing, but it's just slower than it has been in previous recoveries and in the last few years at a much slower rate.
Has the pace of spending on Beacon Hill slowed to match the slower growth?
It hasn't, unfortunately. And what's interesting, if you look at 10, 15 years ago, the amount of money that the state had to spend on its obligations, called non-discretionary spending, things like debt service or pensions or mass health, that represented about 50% of all spending. It now represents about 70%. So you feel that pressure because there's a lot less discretionary revenue for all of the other priorities.
Well, of course, when revenues are sluggish, and even sometimes when they aren't around here, we start to feel the pressure for more revenues. Senate President Stan Rosenberg gave a major speech last week in which he said, quote, we'll need nothing less than a major infusion of public investment. We have a regressive tax structure that puts the burden increasingly on the working and middle classes, end quote. So he's calling for passage of the so-called fair share tax, which is a question headed for the ballot next year, a 4% surcharge on incomes over $1 million, and the defeat of a potential ballot question that would cut the sales tax. What do you make of this rhetoric?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. We don't agree that the fair share assessment is the way to go for a few reasons. It's a tax on the innovators in our economy, and that's driven a lot of the growth in recent years. And what I mean by that is that marginal 4% tax on income over $1 million will impact lots of entrepreneurs who graduate from our universities and want to discover the next great thing, and do in fact, right? They are successful, and then we penalize them. It would mean a 16% tax on short-term capital gains income. So people who are investing in the economy will see a very high rate, almost mirroring the federal level.
And they'll amscray for more friendly tax climates.
Well, yes, absolutely. And that's... the tax is concentrated in a very small group of taxpayers, and it's likely that at least some of them will move elsewhere, and that has real implications.
We have to take a break, but part of your job is reading the political climate up there. Does Rosenberg and other like-minded tax raisers have a foothold up there, or are they fighting a losing battle, or somewhere in between?
Well, it looks like certainly it's appealing to a lot of voters. Polling certainly says that, and at the last constitutional convention that was required, it passed by an overwhelming majority, so it's an uphill battle to fight it, for sure.
All right, we'll take a short break, and then we'll continue our conversation with the president of the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, Eileen McAnneny. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking taxes with Eileen McAnneny, president of the Mass Taxpayers Foundation. One more thing about this 2018 ballot question, or at least a question that's headed for the ballot, that would slap an extra income tax on high earners over $1 million. The part of the carrot here for voters, in addition to sticking it to the wealthy, is that the money would be earmarked to go to education, something most people support. You're skeptical about that, aren't you?
Well, Well, I think there are a couple of things. It's not guaranteed, certainly, to go to transportation or education, because if it was a specific appropriation, it wouldn't properly be before voters. In other words, our Constitution doesn't allow for it. So I think what you'd see is there's a suggestion that the money would go to new programs, to early education, or to funding transportation. And we're not opposed to that, but I think the reality is if it's going to new programs, it's doing nothing to help with the underlying structural deficit. And in fact, given all the pressures, particularly with the growth in mass health in the state, that a lot of that money might have to go to some existing programs. So, you know, it's unlikely that the money will go, you know, as intended for a variety of reasons.
Obviously, we have to keep a close eye on what's going on in Washington here. A couple of fronts quickly. I'm interested in your thoughts on the potential impact on Massachusetts. Healthcare reform, with the original healthcare plan that didn't make it a couple of weeks ago down in Washington. The analysis by the governor was that I believe it would blow a huge hole in our budget, because we'd have to make up for a lot of the Medicaid funds that we'd lose. And then there's also tax reform being talked about. Briefly, talk about both of those. What are the implications in Massachusetts of these major changes in healthcare and tax policy?
Both have huge impacts on the Commonwealth. So you think about healthcare reform on the federal level. In the Mass Health Program in particular, one of the things they're talking about in Washington is having the Mass Health Program go to a block grant, so they'd cap the amount of money that we spend. And that would have huge implications for the state budget, because our program has been growing at a rapid rate, and we spend more on Medicaid than most other states. And so we have more to lose.
So we'd have to make up the shortfall.
We have to make up the shortfall.
Yeah.
So we have more to lose,
And then briefly on the tax side, what's your worst nightmare about what they might do down there as far as impacting us here?
Well, I don't know that there's a worse nightmare. I think, though, what people need to be aware of is that Massachusetts bases its code on the Internal Revenue Code. So anything that happens in Washington has a direct impact, particularly with respect to corporate taxes. So I think we need to be very mindful of that, because there is a lot of change coming, and we want to be careful. That's another reason why I would caution against the fair share assessment. That's a huge, big new tax that implicates businesses, and we're talking about federal reform at the same time, and that's just a lot of change, and we don't know what those consequences will be.
Yeah. Well, look, watch this time slot, folks, for an interview with the other side of the issue on that fair share tax. In the meantime, Eileen, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your
Thanks.
insight. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to throw it back over now to my colleagues for more WBZ News.